Another one? All right, I'll do it again. I'm going to do it. Ready? All right. I'm going to practice that next time. Good morning. Very good. Did on the slide up above earlier, it said that it's Oscar's last time for quite a while, and so get comfortable. We're going to make this a 3-hour church service today. Lock the doors. So I've been told I'm doing the chalice lighting today, so I'm going to light the chalice. I have some words here to share. Our chalice reminds us that the fire within ourselves is the same fire that illuminates the universe. It is our reminder that all are connected, even through the space of the void is vast, and our experience here is but a blimp in the cosmic timeline. Our future is our promise that in our smallness and in our short time on this earth, that we live intently, deeply, and love for one another. Are honest and have integrity with each other, to be guided by rational thought and critical thinking, and with a sense of sacred responsibility for, as the late astronomer Carl Sagan reminded us, the pale blue dot is the only home we've ever known.
So welcome to the Unitarian Church of Lincoln on this Sunday morning. My name is the Reverend Oscar Sinclair. I join our worship associate, Michael Reinmiller, in welcoming you to this space and this time. This is the last Sunday before I go on sabbatical, so Michael informs me that 4 hours was a joke. It's actually 2.5. It's actually one, maybe an hour and 10 minutes. If you have somewhere to go, you'll be fine. So over the last several years, the way that we have gathered has often changed. But whether we gather in person, on Zoom, on a YouTube live stream, or some other way of being that we cannot yet imagine, worship together is a chance to deepen our connection with the source of meaning in our lives, and to proclaim who we are and what we're about together as a community. We throw open the doors of our congregation and proclaim the radical love and welcome that is at the heart of our faith. Every Sunday morning, we say that the Unitarian Church of Lincoln aspires to be a loving community, uniting reason with spiritual exploration to transform ourselves and the world. So welcome to this loving community. May we, in our gathering here, be about that work of transformation. And if you would, please rise in body or in spirit and join. Bob's going to lead us in this one. Hymn number 328 in the gray hymnal, I Sought the Wood in Summer. We have not sung this hymn before. So this is a dangerous thing. But I did discover this week, as I was reflecting on my first 6 years in Nebraska, I discovered that there is a hymn in the Unitarian Universalist hymnal written by Willa Cather, which is this hymn. So I'll get out of the way now.
All right. Bill's going to intro us, right? Here we go. I sought the wood in summer when every twig was green. The rudest boughs were tender and buds were pink between. Light-fingered aspens trembled in fitful sun and shade. Daffodils were
If anyone would like to come forward for the story, you're welcome to do so now. This is a story about a squirrel who thought that life was really frightening. His name is Scaredy Squirrel, and his story was written by Melanie Watt. Scaredy Squirrel also warned me before opening the book initially to please use hand sanitizer so that my hands were germ-free while turning the pages. The story begins, though, by telling you that Scaredy Squirrel never leaves his tree. He'd rather stay in his safe, familiar nut tree than risk venturing out into the unknown. The unknown can be a very scary place for a squirrel. Here are a few things that Scaredy Squirrel is afraid of: tarantulas, poison ivy, green Martians, killer bees, germs, and sharks. So he is perfectly happy to stay right where he is. You see, there are advantages to never leaving the nut tree, and these include a great view, plenty of nuts, a safe place, and clearly no tarantulas, poison ivy, green Martians, killer bees, germs, or sharks. But there are also disadvantages of never leaving the nut tree. The same old view, same old nuts, and the same old place. In Scaredy Squirrel's nut tree, every day is the same. Everything is predictable. All is under control. And Scaredy Squirrel's daily routine includes 7 a.m., wake up. 7:15 a.m., eat a nut. 7:30 a.m., look at the view. Noon, eat a nut. 12:30, look at the view. 5 p.m., eat a nut. 5:31, look at the view again, and 8 p.m., go to sleep. But let's say, just for example, that something unexpected did happen. You can rest assured that this squirrel is prepared. Here are a few items that are in Scaredy Squirrel's emergency kit: parachute, bug spray, mask and rubber gloves, a hard hat, antibacterial soap, calamine lotion, a net, Band-Aids, and a can of sardines. He also has a plan about what to do in case of an emergency. Here are the steps. Step number 1, panic. Step number 2, run. Step number 3, get the kit. Step number 4, consult exit plan. Step number 5, exit tree, and only if there is absolutely definitively no other option. Step 6, if you're really freaked out, play dead for as long as needed. Now, you might wonder about this exit plan of his. As you might imagine, Scaredy Squirrel has written it down as notes to himself. Note number 1, watch out for green Martians and killer bees in the sky. Note number 2, do not land in a river. If unavoidable, use sardines to distract sharks. Brilliant. Note number 3, look out for poison ivy and tarantulas roaming on the ground. Note number 4, keep in mind that germs are everywhere. And note number 5, remember, if all else fails, playing dead is a good option. With his emergency kit in hand, Scaredy Squirrel watches day in and day out. He watches until one day, at Thursday, 7:37 a.m., a killer bee appears. Scaredy Squirrel jumps in panic, knocking his emergency kit out of the tree. This was not part of the plan. Scaredy Squirrel jumps to catch his kit, and he quickly regrets this idea because the parachute is in the kit. But something incredible happens. He starts to glide. It turns out that Scaredy Squirrel is no ordinary squirrel. He's a flying squirrel. Scaredy Squirrel forgets all about the killer bees, not to mention the tarantulas, poison ivy, green Martians, germs, and sharks. He feels overjoyed. adventurous, carefree, alive, until he lands in a bush. So he decides to play dead for 2 hours. Finally, Scaredy Squirrel realizes that nothing horrible is happening in the unknown today. So he quickly returns to his nut tree. All this excitement has inspired Scaredy Squirrel to make some drastic changes in his life. But of course, he had to plan it out. Scaredy Squirrel's new and improved daily routine is as follows. 7 a.m., wake up. 7:15 a.m., eat a nut. 7:30 a.m., look at the view. 9:37 a.m., jump into the unknown. When he's done exploring, he returns home, eats a nut, looks at the view, and eventually goes to sleep. He's considering a name change, but he needs to think about that a little bit more still. And that is the end of our story. And next, it is a joy and honor for me to introduce a dear friend. Chris Sayer is going to be playing some music for us, and while he does, the children and youth are dismissed to the in-gathering. Wow.
Well, thanks for having me back on this special day. Wow. I was going to say something about this song, but I think I'm just going to sing it because it says it all. I will say this is my favorite Rodney Crowell song, if you're a fan. I don't worry as much as I used to, and lately it just ain't my style. And the hard times don't hurt like they ought to. They pass quicker like when I was a child. But somehow I've learned how to listen to the sound of the sun going down. In the magic the morning is bringing, there's a song for the life I have found. It keeps my feet on the ground, and these midwinter days aren't so heavy, they just flow like the breeze through my mind, where nothing appears in a hurry to make up for some old lost time. And somehow I've learned how to listen to the sound of the sun going down. In the magic the morning is bringing, there's a song for the life I have found. It keeps my feet on the ground. And somehow I've learned how to listen to the sound of the sun going sitting down in the magic morning is bringing. There's a song for the friends I've found. You keep my feet on the ground.
Each week, we set aside time in our service to share the joys and sorrows of our lives. We do this because we know that sorrow is easier borne when it is shared, and that joy is easier to celebrate with a crowd. And so, into this shared space, if you would, speak the name of somebody that you are holding in sorrow. It could be yourself, it could be somebody you know. If you're in the live chat, simply type the name into the chat, and I will repeat it into this space. Who are we holding in sorrow this morning?
The Virginia victims of the school shooting.
The Virginia victims of the school shooting.
Everyone involved, yeah. All around. Fighting words.
And Elsbeth.
Dave Asper's family.
Dave Asper's family. Ed.
Tim Hopkins.
Tim Hopkins. I apologize, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties with the live chat. Are there other names we are carrying in sorrow this morning?
Dan and Bill.
Dan and Bill.
Will, who lost their job.
Will, who lost their job. We know, too, that sorrow is not the end. Oh, there we go. Sorrows in the live chat for Ricky, for Raymond, for Donna, and sorrow for all who knew and loved Tony. We know, too, that sorrow is not the only story. That every time we gather, there are folks mourning and there are folks celebrating in this room. That is one of the things that makes us a community. So what names do we hold up in joy this morning? Patrick.
My father-in-law, John Lozier, is 80 today.
John is 80 today. Happy birthday.
Linda Egger, who provided the beautiful flowers this morning.
Linda Ager, who has provided the flowers this morning. Evelyn and Sydney. Sydney, who joined the congregation this morning. The Pearsons.
Prim, our grandson's other grandfather, became a citizen last week.
Prim became a citizen last week. Robin. Erica Harker's birthday is tomorrow. There's also a joy for Lexi. We know as well, especially those introverts among us, that there are some joys and sorrows that are deeply felt but not yet ready to be spoken. we hold a moment of silence for all of those no less deeply felt for being silent. Amen. If you would stay seated for this next hymn, it's hymn number 391 in the gray hymnal, Voice Still and Small.
Okay, so I was told that I'm supposed to do the offering a few days ago, and I knew it. It was on my calendar, and it was promptly ignored for months. And so I found this on the internet a few days ago, and I thought, gosh, this hits the offering so well. So the stars aligned. Let me see. I heard my mom asking our neighbor for some salt. We had salt at home, so I asked her, "Why were you asking?" She told me they don't have much money. They sometimes ask us for things. So I asked for something small that wouldn't burden them. I want them to feel as if we need them too. That way it will be much easier for them to ask for anything we need. I thought that was very fitting of the offering. And so the official ask, I guess, is give what you can. And when you aren't able to, please come anyway.
When I realized I was going to be sharing the service with Oscar and he was heading off across the pond, it reminded me of a tune that I came up with a couple of years back. It was just doodling around. And I was kind of, at that point in my life, dealing with looking into my ancestry and finding out that I'm quite the Heinz 57, you know. And realizing there's some French in me that I never realized. So, boy, that's kind of scary. But the English part of me was pretty predominant. So I was going to name this tune after I kind of was into a culinary thing, and you know, the English have all kinds of iconic dishes, which Oscar is going to find out about. You know, the obvious choices would have been fish and chips, bangers and mash, pigs in a blanket. But I wanted to go deeper, and so I came up with two choices, and I still can't decide what I'm going to call this tune. And I don't want to make this very long, but it's going to probably be, but longer than it should be. those of you that are meat eaters would probably prefer a title like Toad in the Hole. Now, Oscar will find out about Toad in the Hole, which is basically sausages in a Yorkshire pudding batter, which is essentially a pancake batter, but instead of on a griddle, they put it in an oven and kind of bake it. And so the little sausages are sticking up through the batter, I guess, and that's why it's Toad in the Hole. But for those of us that are more vegetarians, I came up with Bubble and Squeak, which Oscar is going to find out about. And so basically that's cooked potatoes and cabbage mixed together and fried. So, you know, you'll probably hear about Bubbles and Squeak and Toad in the Hole. And there's others that we aren't going to mention here because they're pretty inappropriate names. The English, you know, have a way they do that. But there was a food writer, I'm almost done here. The food writer, Howard Hillman, he called Bubble and Squeak probably the greatest peasant dish in the world. So if you're into the peasant thing, when you're over in England, you may hear Bubbles and Squeak and Toad in the Hole. Now you know. So just a little heads up. And so I've never performed this tune in public. I hope I can get through it, but this is, we're going to call it Bubbles and Squeak, Bubble and Squeak today. And it's just, it'll take 2 seconds. So the introduction, I'm sorry, was kind of long. I'm going to try it one more time. I knew I couldn't do it. There it is.
That was great. Yes, I got a list of the English dishes that we are not allowed to say in church right before the service. There are a few. Back 15 years ago, back some number of years ago, when I was first thinking about going to seminary, I decided I needed to know more about what Unitarian Universalists believed, and I picked up this book. That's How We Are Called. It was a meditation manual put together by Unitarian Universalist ministers serving across the country. And there's a reading in it that was foundational for me. It's an Elia Kemmler piece, and it's titled "The Church Where Everything Goes Wrong." 6 weeks into the church year, she writes, I have realized that I am the minister of a church where things usually go wrong. This morning, the copy machine jams repeatedly. The bulletin describing the order of worship has been copied with the second page first and also upside down. No one has remembered to turn on the lights in the sanctuary before the service, so it is dark because it's raining outside. The microphone is buzzing, and every so often lets out a painful, high-pitched squeal that makes everybody wince. We've just started the service when somebody runs up with a bunch of flowers for the altar, just as someone else runs in with one of the silk arrangements we keep for the mornings when no one brings real flowers. There's laughter as the two flower bearers meet at the altar. They decide on the real flowers, and things settle down for a while until one of the babies starts crying, which sets off another baby crying. I try to speak over the wailing as their fathers hustle them down the aisle and try to distract them in the back. Usually, I love watching the tall, gentle fathers who bounce their babies in backpacks at the rear of the sanctuary. But today, I'm annoyed because I want it to be quiet and holy and lovely, and things are definitely not shaping up that way. The woman who's helping with worship gets up and, instead of giving the announcements, introduces the candle lighting time, which comes later. People call out, "Not yet!" More laughter. The organist starts playing the wrong hymn, and a couple of choir members yell over the din for him to stop. A few minutes later, during the period for prayerful silence, he accidentally falls onto the keyboard. Causing the organ to emit horrible gassy noises. Shrieks and snorts of laughter. All pretense of Sunday morning decorum is lost. And something inside me, some furious, bossy desire to have my worship service go according to my plan, finally slides free, and I laugh with them. This will be the first of many times that I laugh at Sunday morning details gone awry. It is also the first of many times that I imagine that God is watching, looking up or down or over or out at us from wherever God sits on Sunday mornings, slightly amazed and maybe at a loss for words, because we, God's people, are so funny and wonderful and odd, all at the same time. In moments like this, I imagine God as a sturdy old woman with her hands on her hips, or perhaps an old rabbi pulling on his long white beard. I imagine a God shaking his or her or their head and saying, "What in the world are they doing over there? This is what they call church? What were they thinking?" But I also imagine a God who is touched and maybe a little honored by our efforts, however halting, to worship and give praise. I imagine a God who is moved by our attempts to care for one another and to name the things we know as holy. There is a warmth in this congregation that is new to me, a simple friendliness that shines through the fumblings and failures, a love that makes the ragged edges smooth. I've always wanted to believe, really believe, that our mistakes aren't the most important parts of us. I've always wanted to believe that kindness and compassion matter more than anything. I sense I can learn this here. 20 years after writing that, Elia Kemmler is still at the same church. Our next hymn is number 398, "To See the World." This is another new one, so we're going to do it once through instrumentally and then sing it together.
Couldn't have worked out better to have the wrong slide up while he was reading that. I'd like to think that was planned, but it wasn't. That's on me.
My teacher, Galen Gingrich, used to tell us to write every sermon for two people. The person who has walked into church for the first time this morning, and the person who is giving religion one last chance before leaving for good. Statistically, he said, most of us who serve churches, most of us would serve churches where both of those people would be present almost every Sunday, and that they were the most important people in the church. I don't know about his math, but it is a weekly check for me. How does the thing that we're saying welcome people in? This is a strange Sunday for that question, as it is the last sermon that I'll be preaching here in Lincoln for a little while. Not the last sermon I'll be preaching in Lincoln, just to say that right at the beginning. This is a temporary state of affairs. Starting next Sunday, I will be on sabbatical for 5 months, living in England, wrapping up a doctorate, and sharing some research with the English Unitarian denomination. Over a year ago, I cold called a friend of a friend who works for the denomination over there and told them the story of Charles Stephen, the former minister of the Unitarian Church of Lincoln, who in the 1970s did a pulpit exchange going to England, and I never figured out if it was a sabbatical or not, but he went to England for several months 50 years ago. One thing led to another, and for the last year, I have been planning this thing, and suddenly it's very real. Our house is full of boxes. Some of them are packed. Our suitcases are full. We seem to be under the weight limit for international travel. We'll see. But it's not just an idea. It's a thing that's actually happening this week, a week from today. So before I go, I do want to take Reverend Gingrich's advice, though. I want to take it very literally and talk to those two groups that he described directly, those attending a church, this church, for the first time, and those giving organized religion one last chance before walking out. Because I want to tell you, I want to tell all of you a little bit about the Unitarian Church of Lincoln that I've grown to love for the last 6 years. And it's not a story that's particularly coherent, because love stories never are. So let me warn you at the outset that we're going to jump around in time a lot over the next 20 minutes. So let's start. As a reminder, sermons are PG-13. What the hell kind of mission statement is "we show up"? It's June of 2017, and I'm in a room at the Candlewood Suites over on 70th Street in the midst of candidating week here. I'm talking to my wife, Stacy, trying to understand why on earth this congregation has taken a relatively common Unitarian Universalist slogan, "We are the Church of Open Minds, Loving Hearts, and Helping Hands," slapped "we show up" at the end of it, and called it a mission statement. We show up, great. To do what? Showing up as a tool. It's not an end. And a mission statement is supposed to describe the most fundamental identity of a community. What is the thing that makes the Unitarian Church of Lincoln distinct from all other Unitarian Universalist congregations, indeed, all other houses of worship in the country? We show up? Really? But it's June of 2018. It's a year after that. And I'm walking around the Unitarian Universalist Association's General Assembly in Kansas City. Now, most churches will we get 7 delegates to General Assembly at this church. Most churches our size get about 7 and usually send 2 or 3. If you're hosting General Assembly nearby, maybe you send 10 or 12. There were over 50 Unitarians from Lincoln in Kansas City. There were Airbnbs full of Unitarians from Lincoln. I could not walk through the convention center in Kansas City, which is huge, without seeing somebody from my new congregation. I spent the whole week with colleagues of mine who I've known for years coming up to me and saying, "What's going on in Lincoln? We keep seeing your people here. Why? How did you do this thing?" And I said, I don't know, they show up. It was a shocking moment, but it set the tone for years to come. Because then it's August of 2020, in the teeth of the worst of the pandemic, and in the aftermath of the killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, countless Black Americans. Over 50 of our members sign up for Beloved Conversations, a Unitarian Universalist program interrogating privilege, white supremacy, how each of us and the institutions we create exist in systems of oppression and liberation. Now, Beloved Conversations has never actually released this information. But over 2 years of participation, I'm pretty confident in saying that there is no other UU congregation that showed up in such numbers or consistency for that program. We maxed out our capacity for the second part of the program. We had more people interested than they had room for. We've moved through the program faster than any other congregation. We've outstripped the people running the program. They've said, "We don't have anything more for you. Do your own thing now." But the result has been a sea change in how we talk about anti-racism in this congregation. It's gone from being one of many social justice topics to a central conviction of this community, that none of us are free until all of us are free, and that we have an obligation, a requirement, to work towards building the beloved community here, now, practically, with each other. That didn't just happen. It happened because this congregation showed up over and over and over again. I'm pretty sure that partnership was chosen as a big idea here so that the congregation didn't have to choose anything specific and let people down. It's spring of 2018, and I'm on the phone with Jean Pupke, my mentor, and I'm trying to explain to her why, after months of deliberation that I was not here for, this congregation said, "Our big idea, the thing that we will focus on for 5 years, is partnership. That's our priority." 5 years of focusing on partnership. Partnership to do what? To what end? Well, they chose it for a reason, Jean told me. You could try it and see it where it leads, especially if you can't articulate why. Jean was blunt on this and many other occasions. Just be honest about who gets the credit when it works. She was not talking about me. Here we are some years later. This congregation is one of the charter members of Justice in Action, community organizing network building power among progressive faith communities in Lincoln. I've served a term as the president of the Faith Coalition of Lancaster County. We spent this last summer building relationships with the indigenous community here in Lincoln, not to convert or to help, but because relationship itself is important. This spring, we're doing something similar with our anti-racism work, and there is nothing that makes me prouder in my day-to-day professional life, prouder of the church that I serve, than when the phone rings and I get to tell a neighbor congregation, "Yeah, we got your back. We got you. Where and when do you need us to show up?" Because what's our mission as a congregation? There we go. Showing up. That's what we do, even when we can't quite articulate why we're showing up yet. Linda Brown has told me a few times now that she thinks that the lesson that I've taught this congregation is that it's okay to be imperfect, that it's okay to make mistakes. I think this is not a backhanded compliment. And yes, on one level, I spend a lot of time practicing being unflappable on Sunday morning when something goes wrong. That reading was foundational. I've spent time telling staff and volunteers that the goal of a church is not perfection, but being human together. Part of being human is being able to pivot quickly. The best laid plans gain afterglay and all that. So I assume that at least a part of this lesson that I've accidentally taught the congregation is based on the number of times that I have fallen flat on my face, metaphorically or literally, on Sunday morning, and reminded everyone, somewhat self-servingly, that perfection is not the goal. Alan Watts, in his autobiography, wrote, "A priest once told me the Roman saying that a religion is dead when the priests laugh at each other across the altar. I always laugh at the altar, be it Christian, Hindu, or Buddhist, because real religion is the transformation of anxiety into laughter." Now, I have done less experimentation with psychedelics than Alan Watts did. But this has always struck me as a decent summary of my approach to faith. Real religion is the transformation of anxiety into laughter. So the lesson is not simply about imperfection. It's about taking the anxiety that comes with imperfection and turning it into joy, turning it into laughter, turning it into community. It's about those moments, as Elliot Kemmler describes it, where I imagine God is watching, looking up or down or over or out at us from wherever God sits on Sunday mornings, slightly amazed and at a loss for words, because we, God's people, are so funny and wonderful and odd, all at the same time. But if the lesson I've taught this community is about imperfection, the lesson I've learned from this community is about practice. How sometimes it's about showing up over and over again. How sometimes it's about picking up a phone when a neighbor calls, or learning that the most helpful thing to say is, "What do you need from me right now?" And in all of those moments, I've learned that the result is less important than the practice of showing up. It's March of 2017. I've just interviewed with the Unitarian Church in Lincoln for the first time. I am high off of a successful internship at a large East Coast congregation, the Unitarian Universalist Church at Shelter. Congregation, whoo, they would be mad at me for that. Congregation at Shelter Rock. I've been cleared for search, coming into ministry as a second career. My first stint in grad school was in public policy on the quantitative methods and evaluation track, a discipline defined by putting outcome over process, by measuring outcome. Show me the numbers, show me what it actually does. What lever are you pulling, and what happens when you pull it? It's a lesson that I've brought into ministry and still use most days. But now it's January 1st, 2023, last Sunday, 1 week ago. And I've just preached at Shelter Rock, returning there for the first time since moving to Lincoln almost 6 years ago. And on the drive home, somewhere in Ohio, I think, Stacy asks how I'm feeling after being back in that space for the first time. I realized about halfway through the sermon that I'm a better minister than I was when I was here. I mean, I thought I was hot stuff when I was at Shelter Rock. But I am much more comfortable in this role than I ever was when I worked there. Yeah, you should probably tell the congregation that. Sometimes showing up again and again and again in the midst of imperfection, with partners we did not choose, unattached to any particular outcome, is the right path. That's the spiritual practice. The practice is the point. That's the lesson that you've taught me. That's the lesson that has made me a better minister when I go back to Shelter Rock, and I realize that halfway through this sermon. And that is a good lesson for starting a sabbatical. Because here's another truth: for as much as I was a results-oriented quantitative methods guy before seminary, nobody goes into ministry on the basis of a carefully constructed pro and con list. Nobody would go to ministry if you put that list together or listened to it. I started down this path because I heard a call. Still small voice in the whirlwind, that voice still and small that we sang about. So it's fall of 2012. There's a hymn that we used to sing at the chapel services at Wesley Seminary. It's not obviously in our Unitarian hymnal, but the chorus goes, "Here I am, Lord, it is I, Lord. I've heard you calling in the night. I will go if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart." So for all the head stuff that I might have been good at, it was the call in the night that got me. And plenty of moments since where I've said, okay, if this is what I'm supposed to be doing, you better be with me. Because you, ineffable as you are, you set me on this path. So it's January 8th, 2023. Here are my hopes for the next 5 months. First, and practically, that I get this doctorate done. I fully intend to return to Lincoln as the Reverend Dr. Sinclair. I am on track to do that. I brought in my great-grandfather's preaching robes rather than packing them. I inherited them when I was in seminary, but I've never worn them. They have doctoral stripes on them. So I do hope that I can wear them when I get back. But for everything else, I hope I can let go of the result. I hope I can just show up. I've spent the last 5.5 years constantly responding to events, often, especially in the last 3 years, on a compressed schedule with high stakes. And whether it was trying to start up a new ministry, aggressively grow UCL's programming, or respond to the pandemic, I've been keeping an intense pace since 2017. I track the hours that I work. It's not a 40-hour-a-week job, or hasn't been. That pace has felt necessary, but it's also not conducive to the kind of quiet contemplation and prayer that called me to this profession. It's not conducive to listening for the still, small voice. So the big questions that I'm bringing to the sabbatical, what do I want a long ministry in Lincoln to look like for me? Do I want to focus on teaching, on justice? How do I balance work and family life long term? Are not questions that are best served by a pro-con list, especially not on a deadline. They're questions that require long, unhurried walks, time in spiritual practice, a break from routine, and I am very, very grateful to this congregation in ways that I cannot put into words for the opportunity to do that. So my hopes for this place are similar. This place. My hopes for you, these people, you, plural. You have a full agenda as a church for the next 5 months. Adopting the 8th principle, looking at your bylaws, looking at our bylaws, launching OWL, Comprehensive Sex Ed Programming, continuing recovery from the pandemic, something about heat pumps in the sanctuary. If you do all of those things, on top of what we did in the fall, this will have been a remarkably productive congregational year. It is already, if we stopped the congregational year now on January 8th, this would have been a remarkably productive congregational year. And doing all of that isn't the end. That's not the thing that you are about as a congregation, because the practice is as important as the result. Showing up is, in fact, the mission statement of this church. So my ask for the next 5 months is not that you get all of that agenda done. We'll have time to do that. If you get it done, that's great. But we'll pick it up in July. It is that you keep showing up for each other. You keep showing up for our partners in the community. That you see each other so wonderful and funny and odd all at the same time. Show up, be in community, and laugh about it. So if you are here giving organized religion one last chance, look around. Actually, everybody look around, so as not to call those people out. And see if maybe you can see God's people funny, wonderful, and a little odd all at once in this room. I can. And if this is your first time here, welcome. This is a group of people who show up. They want to know you. Welcome, and I cannot wait to hear what you find. Amen. Our closing hymn is number 108 in the gray hymnal. My life flows on in endless song. If you would please rise in body or in spirit.
Reverend Sinclair will begin his 5-month sabbatical next Sunday, January 15th. We want to close our service today by wishing Oscar and Stacy a fulfilling and rejuvenating sabbatical experience and offer blessings to each other.
I should say by introduction that this is a piece of liturgy that's often used by UU ministers going on sabbatical. I am grateful for my ministry with you and the gift of this opportunity for spiritual, emotional, and professional growth and replenishment. I ask that you embrace this sabbatical time as well, encouraging and supporting one another in growth and replenishment and laughter, that's not in the script, while I'm away.
It's traditional for travelers to ask for a leave-taking blessing, and Reverend Sinclair has asked that we offer a blessing for him and Stacy. Oscar and Stacy, we send you off on sabbatical with our good wishes and our blessings. We will keep you in our hearts, knowing that you are part of us and we are part of you. We trust that you'll return recharged and energized for our shared ministry. Friends, will you please affirm this blessing by saying, "We send you with our blessing."
We thank you and will hold tight to your blessings on our journeys. You will be in our hearts wherever we go.
I look forward to my return and to sharing what we've all experienced during our time apart.
May the sabbatical spark excitement for our whole congregation. Oscar, as you travel, let our love be the gentle current supporting you, moving you to new places and bringing you home to us again. Our closing words are from Eric Williams. Blessed is the path on which you travel. Blessed is the body that carries you upon it. Blessed is your heart that has heard the call. Blessed is your mind that discerns the way. Blessed is the gift that you will receive by going. Truly blessed is the gift that you will become on the journey. May you go forth in peace.
Amen. That's the end of the service. I'm going to get out of the way because Chris has one more piece of music.
By the way, Stacy, I didn't mean to not include you in our culinary discussion earlier. Okay. I don't know who, I'm sure you guys cook together, so you'll be coming up. Well, okay. Bubble and squeak. And it's nice to know that we have such a forgiving congregation because I couldn't quite get to that G. It kept hitting the F sharp. But that's part of the fun. You never know. Never know what's going to come out of this person. So for my final song, I went back to 1972, the year I graduated from high school. I love this song, and I've never heard anybody else do it. It's written by Gene Clark, who was one of the founding members of the Byrds. Boy, that dates me. The Byrds. If you lived through the 60s, you know who I'm talking about. And it's a great little song, and I'm going to try. I hope I can hit the right notes. But if I don't, it's okay. And that's nice to know. So it's called Full Circle. Funny how the circle turns around. First you're up, and then you're down again. Though the circle takes what it may give, each time around, it makes you live again. Funny how the circle is a wheel, and it can steal someone who is a friend. Funny how the circle takes your flight, and if it's right, it brings it back again. Funny how the circle turns around. You think you're lost, and then you're found again. Though you always look for what you know, each time around it's something new again. Funny how the circle is a wheel, and it can steal someone who is a friend. Funny how the circle takes your flight, and if it's right, it brings it back again. Funny how the circle turns around. First you're up, and then you're down again. Though the circle takes what it may give, each time around it makes you live again.